Han Hong visiting a Daoist temple. From the Tower of Immortals, I can see the 5 gateways. The countryside is fresh and cool after rainfall in the night. Distant mountains merge into woodlands close to Chin, where autumn washboards sounded near the Han Palace. In the stillness, a few pines cast shadows on the altar. Fine grasses send their fragrance from a secluded hollow. What use is there in searching for a world beyond? Here, within the human world, are the heavenly hills. Okay, so we continue with one poem by Han Hong. Now, in each of the different sections of this anthology, the poets and the poems are basically organized chronologically. So Han Hong is a person we've already encountered before. He has 4 poems in this anthology. We've read 2, which I think were pentasyllabic Liu Xi. He has this poem now, and I think he has a heptasyllabic quatrain, and that is the last of his poems. So 4 poems would put him into the Bronze League of classical Chinese poets. Remember, most of the authors that are represented in this anthology are only represented by 1 or at most 2 poems, so he has 4. And we're not going to recap his biography, but suffice it to say that he is one of the Dali era poets. You know, those poets. He was a friend of Lulun, he was a friend of Qianqi, and he was one of that group of poets who mainly flourished in the second half of the 8th century, in the period after the Anlushan rebellion, but before the strengthening and recovery of imperial power of the Yuan He period, from 805 to 820. So you will remember what we've been saying lately of the Dali era poets. They were mainly conceptualized as manneristic writers with craftsmanship, but not too original, so following in the footsteps of the High Tang poets of the previous era. So, moving on to this specific poem of Han Hong, the last one that we will read in a few weeks or months' time is his most famous, and in fact that poem, which was about the Cold Food Festival, is reputed to have been so much to the liking of Emperor Dezong that he had Han Hong summoned to the capital. But back to this one. So this is a poem, as the title says, or visiting a Daoist temple. It's not the first time we encounter poems in which scholar officials visit a Daoist temple. Scholar officials were basically of a Confucian persuasion, but you know, ancient China is not the West. Like, they don't have this theologically dogmatic and orthodox belief in the right religious doctrine, or even if they do, they don't apply it like we did in the West with executions and persecutions and inquisitions for the non-believers. So a person could be, you know, basically Confucian, but a little bit Taoistic, or one could mix in different degrees Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism, and other practices. It was pretty common. There was a great amount of religious syncretism, and all the more so during the Tang Dynasty, which was a syncretic period by definition. Anyway, so we have poems of poets, of scholar officials going to Taoist monasteries or retreats or temples, and obviously those poems generally are infused with Taoist imagery and Taoist topics like the search for immortality. This poem that we have today fits into that mold. You could say that the main subject is landscapey descriptive. You know, it's describing the sights, the scene, the area around a Taoist temple. Not too much emphasis on the buildings, but rather on the natural landscape and the way in which it is imbued with the Tao. There is also so that would be the main topic, and you could say there's also an element which is intertwined with the previous one, which would also be Taoistic, which is the idea that achieving the state of Taoist illumination does not require necessarily the traveling to other worlds. So the Taoists believe that through certain practices, alchemical and ascetic and of other types, and by matching the flow of nature, the Tao being for them the law of nature, which is different from the conventional laws and beliefs of humans and of human society, They believe that by patterning this model of nature, one could achieve long life, longevity, immortality perhaps. One could refine and distill one's essence and go to the heavens where the immortals dwelled, or to different mini paradises that existed all around the world, inside mountains and in different places. But the message in Han Hong's poem is this world is paradise by itself. We do not need to escape to some other fairy tale, Daoistic land of bliss and immortal life. This world is already beautiful and immortal and enchanting and magical. An illumination of the Taoist sort can be achieved within it. Yeah? Perhaps, the tone reminds me a little bit the Chan sect of Buddhism's doctrinal beliefs. So perhaps there is an influence of that also in this poem. But anyway, let's get to work as usual by analysing the poem couplet by couplet. First couplet. From the Tower of Immortals I can see the 5 gateways. The countryside is fresh and cool after rainfall in the night. So the poem, as we said, is mainly descriptive. The first couplet usually introduces us to the place, and this first couplet does it by peppering the line with some names, some indications of the specific Taoist temple or monastery that is being visited. The name of the Taoist temple is not explicitly stated, but at least some structures there are. A Tower of the Immortals is probably located there, or is the main building. And there might be another one, the 5 gateways. So the first couplet shows us a contrast of sight, of insight. The poet is climbing the Tower of the Immortals. Now this is a human structure, but it can also be used symbolically, like the poet is climbing the tower to immortality, to godhood, in the Taoist fashion. And from the heights, as usual, remember this is a staple fare, a very common, almost trite topic in classical Chinese poetry, elevating yourself by climbing a tower, by climbing a mountain, produces insight, because you see more from the heights, but you also get inner knowledge. And this seems to be what is happening here in a way. So there is insight from the top, and it's a vertical insight focused towards up in the first line and down in the second line. So Han Hong is in the tower, he has climbed up. From the tower he can see the 5 gateways. Now the 5 gateways, just like the Tower of Immortals, I think is meant to be ambiguous, but I wouldn't be able to say that 100%. The 5 gateways belong to a mythical island paradise of Taoism. So, he's saying from the top of this tower, I can see that Taoist paradise far away. It wouldn't be perhaps difficult to believe that perhaps within the Taoist temple precincts, there was another building called the 5 gateways, or a gateway. So perhaps there is an overlapping, a juxtaposition of these two possible readings. From reaching the top of his search, of his quest for immortality, he can see within his grasp the immortal realm, or specifically in this temple, climbing this Tower of the Immortals, he can see a building or a gate or 5 gateways which are located in part of the temple. And probably both images are meant to be evoked. Second couplet. Distant mountains merge into woodlands close to Chin, where autumn washboards sounded near the Han Palace. So if the first couplet focused us on a vertical viewing, up and down, the second couplet focuses on a horizontal viewing. The poet looks further apart towards the horizon, and what does he see there? So this Taoist temple must be outside of the heartland of Guangchong, the land within the passes, because from the temple, looking out, Han Hong sees the mountains just beyond the horizon merging with the forests of Qin, Qin being the old kingdom of the Warring States period that had been lodged in what later became the capital area of the imperial dynasties, at least of the Han, of the Tang. So far, far away one can see the land of Qin, and it's for the parallelistic couplet it's good Qin met here, because in the next line we will have Han, another dynasty. So beyond, far away in the distance, we see those mountains merging with the forests in such a way as one cannot be distinguished from the other. The indistinctness of things. It's also a very typical Daoistic image, which is being perhaps indirectly referenced in this commingling of mountains and forests. Anyway, that's in the direction of Qin, far away, and where autumn washboards sounded near the Han Palace. So, reference to Han, the Han imperial capital Chang'an was the same, well, almost the same as the Qin imperial capital Xiangyang, a little bit displaced there, but in the same general area. So Han Hong is looking in that direction, in the direction of the capital and of the heartland. It's interesting how this couplet, in that gaze towards the area, introduces a visual image, the mountains merging with the woodlands. So that's a spatial visual image. We have a chronological image by evoking the old names of the area, Qin, Han. It's evoking the past, so it's a looking at the heartland, but also a looking at the past in time. And we have an oral image as well, the autumn washboards sounding near the Han Palace. So these autumn washboards clearly make it plain that the poem is meant to be set in autumn. This could already have been introduced by the second line of the poem, where the countryside was fresh and cool after rainfall in the night. We didn't mention it there. We focus on the vertical up image. The down image was the countryside, all the surrounding land at the foot of the tower. Shiny, glistening, fresh and cool. Coolness is generally associated with spring and autumn as a pleasant quality. So, looking up, we see the 5 gateways, whether the Daoist paradise or a construction in the temple. Down, we have a beautiful countryside that is fresh and shiny from the rain. Looking towards the horizon, one can see the mountains and the forests of Qin merging into one. One can evoke, even if one does not hear, the washing boards. This was again a conventional image of autumn and of sadness and of melancholy nights at the capital. The women washing the clothes of their absent husbands and fulling them in a fulling block, making a thudding, dull noise. And again with references, not to the current day capital, but to the past iterations of the capital, that is Qin and Han. Third couplet. So the third couplet brings us back. In the first couplet, as we said, we looked up and down. In the second couplet, we looked towards the direction of the capital and towards the past. In the third couplet, we return to the temple and its immediate surroundings. In the stillness, a few pines cast shadows on the altar. Fine grasses sent their fragrance from a secluded hollow. This is a very parallelistic couplet as well. So we have 2 elements of nature, pines and grasses. The pines give us a visual image. The pines are casting their shadow down. The grasses are spreading their scent, but both are active forces of nature. They're acting, doing something. And they are in the whereabouts of the temple and of a Daoist space. That's why the pines cast the shadows on an altar, maybe an open-air altar, which is in the temple. And the fine grasses send their fragrance from a secluded hollow. That secluded hollow might be a hermitage or, a cave where Daoists that are practicing at the temple, or perhaps Han Hong himself, is employing as a refuge for Daoist meditation and meditation practices. But anyway, we get back to the space of the temple, to Daoist practices and spaces, but also to nature accompanying those spaces and acting towards and in those spaces. And finally, we get the conclusion, which sums it all up as usual, with a philosophical message that can be extracted from this natural space that has been described now, whether directly as in the third couplet, or used as an axis for contemplating the outside as in the first and the second couplets. What use is there in searching for a world beyond? Here, within the human world, are the heavenly hills. So here in this Taoist temple, and here in this noumenal world, here we can achieve the ideal. Here we can experience the pleasures of the Taoistic communion with nature and of a paradise state. The heavenly hills dwell in the human realm. So here one does not need to travel or to visit other immortal paradises. Being here, in this Taoist temple and enjoying the nature, enjoying the surrounding area, meditating, gaining insight. Here one is already become one with nature, is already become an immortal like spirit.